Hunger Games fans have come up with tons of fan theories, some good and some bad. In this video, I'm going to go through 25 of these fan theories and react to them and give my thoughts on them. I've obviously been studying these books and movies for as long as this channel has been around, so I'm going to use that knowledge and really dive deep. I haven't seen any of these yet. I had my buddy put this list together, so I'm going in blind just like you guys. If you like this video, hit that like button. It will greatly help the channel with the algorithm. And if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, and you can also follow me on all of my other social medias, all of which are linked down below, and all of which house similar content that I make here on this channel. Now that I've said that, let's get into it. Alright, the first theory. Cinna bought Katniss. Joanna and Finnick introduced Katniss to the horrors of being a victor, yet she faced few personal issues herself. This theory claims that she would have, if not for Cinna's intervention. In Mockingjay, Finnick explained if a victor is considered desirable, the president gives them as a reward or allows people to buy them for a certain amount of money. Looking at this, Cinna bought Katniss to prevent anyone else from being able to use her in that way. Honestly, I could see Cinna doing something like that, especially to protect Katniss, who he had a very strong relationship with, but I don't think that he was high enough in the Capitol to be able to have that much leverage. I don't think that Snow would allow him to buy Katniss, especially because Snow probably saw him as someone who's somewhat of a threat, and that was pretty much confirmed with the costumes he made for Katniss and Peeta. So I really don't think that even if Cinna was high enough in the ranking to buy Katniss, I don't think that Snow would sell her to him. Next theory, District 11 is a failed career district. In the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which goes over the 10th Hunger Games, it says that districts 1, 2, 4, and 11 are the best. This is odd because District 11 is not a career district by the time the 74th games roll around. District 11 is actually the most policed and most fortified district during the original series, even more than District 12. Meanwhile, the career districts have more privileges, including the Capitol turning a blind eye to them training their kids before the games, which is technically illegal. What if District 11 used to be permitted to train their tributes, but somehow lost this privilege because they tried to start an uprising sometime between the 10th and 74th Hunger Games? I mean, with the extra police force, they could make sure that they don't train the tributes. It is interesting though, because I remember reading the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and being like, 11? That being said though, you look at people like Thresh and you see there are intimidating big people that could pose a threat, so I feel like that was more the thought process that Snow had during the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. But it is cool to think about District 11 having an uprising before the events of the books, and honestly I think they were one of the first districts to get on board for the rebellion with the Mockingjay, so they might have a reason and some animosity as to why they would do that and why they would join so fast. But overall, like, I think it was just because they were built and not because they were a career district. Next theory. Child labor is a huge thing in Panem. Interesting. We know that kids in District 12 aren't put to work in the coal mines until they are already adults at the age of 18. But Katniss theorizes in chapter 23 of Catching Fire that this is unusual, since most children in Panem seem to already know something about their district's trade by the time they are old enough to be in the Hunger Games. This means that other districts conduct child labor. This one I can actually get on board with, especially when you think back to that line from Katniss. I think she thought to herself that Joanna had been tossing around axes since she was a toddler, which obviously goes to their trade. I'm sure she didn't start as a toddler, but they probably start them pretty early. And also with Rue in District 11, I'm pretty sure that there's a line where she says they all stop going to school to help with the harvest and harvest season. So yeah, I think this is a very plausible theory. Next theory. Lucy Gray Baird is President Alma Coin's mother. Both of them are the right ages to be mother and child in the events of the books. If Lucy Gray lived after running from Coriolanus into the woods at the end of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, she may have escaped to District 13. There she would have met someone, fell in love, and had a child who grew up to be President Coin, explaining Coin's deep hatred of President Snow and the Capitol. Or if Lucy Gray discovered that she was pregnant after escaping and Coriolanus was the father, it would explain the light eyes and light hair of Coin's appearance. This would tie Coin's knowledge of District 12 and desire for power directly to the events of the prequel novel. Okay, well, first of all, she doesn't have light eyes, she has gray eyes, while Snow has blue eyes. So that immediately makes me say that this theory is a little wonky, but if you take that part out that Snow is the father, it might have more basis, but it's a long shot that Lucy Gray, out of all the people in District 13, happened to not only make it to District 13, but out of the many people there, that she would be the one that gave birth to Coin. It's just unlikely. The odds of it are very slim. I think it was probably people that were in District 13 from the start who had Alma Coin. Next theory, Thresh's death was a conspiracy. Okay. Thresh wasn't killed by Cato, he was killed by a lightning strike from the Gamemakers. This could have been done for a few reasons, one of which was because he spared Katniss at the feast and the Gamemakers felt that District 11 and 12 were getting too close. Another reason is that it looked like Thresh might be able to take Cato out during their fight and the Gamemakers didn't want that. We didn't get to see how Cato and Thresh fought against each other, but the Gamemakers would most likely prefer a champion from a career district. So there was a storm that made Katniss and Peeta not hear the cannon that killed Thresh. So there was a lightning storm that could have struck Thresh, but again, I find it unlikely, especially because though Katniss and Peeta didn't see the fight, everything is filmed and shown to the entirety of Panem, so they obviously would have seen it. Then again though, if there was a storm, I guess it could have covered it up, or it could have happened at night when everybody was sleeping, but even then, people would still see either the lightning strike or their fight. Next theory, Lucy Gray and Coriolanus are Katniss's grandparents. Okay. Similar to Coin being Lucy Gray's daughter, this theory says that Lucy Gray escaped Snow in the woods, but instead of going to District 13, she went back to District 12. There she discovered she was pregnant with Snow's baby, which was either Katniss's mother or father, who then had Katniss, meaning that Lucy Gray and Coriolanus are Katniss's grandparents. Again, it's a fun theory and it's a fun thing to think about, but it's not very plausible because the odds of her surviving and then making it to District 12, and out of all of the people in the district, she's the one to have Katniss's mother or father. More likely it was just someone in the districts who had them, but again, it is fun to think about and would add a very interesting layer to the entire series. Like Snow literally hates and is going after his granddaughter and has no idea about it. Also, that would mean that Katniss and Snow's granddaughter that was shown a lot in the films would be cousins. Next theory, Gale is dead. Gale went to District 2 for some fancy job. There was a theory that argues that he may have actually died there, perhaps even because of Katniss's decision to kill Coin. The theory points out the oddity that is Gale's disappearance from the series. In both the book and the film, somebody else tells Katniss that he moved away and she doesn't question it. Leaving his fate so vague makes it open to speculation, and his death is certainly one possibility. This is a really bad theory. One, what do they mean, Gale's disappearance from the series? He left at the end of the series, there's nothing more. I mean, eventually, like, yeah, he's gonna die. Like, everybody dies, and it probably happened in District 2, but I don't think he would die right away. I think he would die of old age, or I don't know, he could have died in combat or something. Like, I don't know, this is just a stupid theory that, what's the point of making it? So yeah, that's probably the worst theory so far. Next one. Foxface committed suicide. The theory goes that Foxface was smart enough to realize that surviving the games is only half the battle, so she orchestrated her own death in a way that the Capitol wouldn't blame her family. She ate the poison berries that Peeta didn't recognize to give herself an easy way out and absolve her family of any repercussions. Through the games, Foxface is described as clever and good at surviving. Her accidental death doesn't add up, especially because she spends much of her time identifying and matching plants, which means she would have known which ones were likely poisonous. This one is interesting and I'm glad it's on the list because this theory has become so popular that people actually just say this is canon. I think this one is pretty likely, especially with the evidence that she was good at identifying plants and surviving. So yeah, I think it's a really good theory and there's a reason why people consider it to be canon, even though it's not really canon. Moving on to the next one, Katniss's entire life was manufactured. In the final chapter of Catching Fire, Katniss says, "This elaborate plan in which I was a piece, just as I was meant to be a piece in the Hunger Games." She finds out that she had been guided and prepared to start the revolution. However, this theory says that the manipulation started long before she entered the arena, going back to Katniss's father. Her father might have been planning before Katniss was born, covertly training her to be a tribute. This theory means that Katniss's entire life was a lie. I mean, her father did train her how to use a bow and arrow, but that was to show her how to hunt and survive. And honestly, this theory kind of just paints her father in the worst light. I don't think that her kind-natured father would ever plan for his daughter to be in the Hunger Games. Like, who would plan that besides the careers? Like, who would want that for their kid? The odds that he would be like, oh yeah, let's raise a daughter who can then go in the arena for the district where pretty much every single tribute dies. No, he wouldn't do that. Next theory. Career tributes aren't just training for the games. For every Cato and Clove sent to represent District 2, there's probably a lot more trained killers that were a hair away from being the right person to volunteer. So what do those that didn't make the cut do? This theory says that they fall into roles that serve the Capitol. Things like high-ranking positions that ensure their loyalty to President Snow while also putting their talents that they learned and education to good use. They then get rewarded with perks. They might be part of the police force, bureaucrats, judges, or other jobs in the Capitol. They are put in a role that Snow feels needs a loyal and reliable person. Okay, well, first of all, I don't think that any tribute would ever get a job to be a bureaucrat or a judge in the Capitol. I think that the best they could ever get, according to the series as I understand it, is becoming a peacekeeper. Like, there are so many people in the Capitol that have much better credentials than these District 1 or 2 that didn't even make the cut to be in the Hunger Games. Snow has no use for them. So yeah, you lost me when you said that they would be bureaucrats or judges in the Capitol. It's gonna go to some high-ranking person in the Capitol that spent their whole life getting to that point. So no, nobody from the district is going to be given any special treatment like that. I'm gonna be honest, so far these theories have not been very good. Hopefully this next one will be better. Tigris was a member of the rebellion. This theory states that Tigris may have been a leader or at least one of the original members of the Capitol Rebellion faction. She did this through her work on the Hunger Games being a stylist. The basis of this is her transition from being Snow's #1 fan to being visibly pleased that Katniss plans to kill him, which is such a drastic switch that it makes sense Tigris had a hand in her cousin's destruction. This one I can kind of get on board with, but really I don't think that she would risk her dream of becoming a stylist just to go against everything in the Capitol. Like, she would be buttering people up in the Capitol so that she could become this famous and well-respected stylist. It's fun to think about though that she would be like, screw my cousin, let's take him down. But yeah, I don't think that she would risk her career as a stylist. Next one. The series takes place in a world where Britain won the Revolutionary War. That's pretty out there. It has been noted by Suzanne Collins that Panem, the setting of the Hunger Games trilogy, occurs in North America many years from present day. This theory states that Britain won the Revolutionary War, and after their victory, they took the signers of the Declaration of Independence out. Then Britain took out the colony making the least amount of money, Georgia. This is because it is the furthest south and thus farthest away from the capital in District 13. And to keep installing fear into these rebellious colonies enters the Hunger Games. What this theory proposes is that Britain, having just gone through a large war with the rebellious colonists, would set up a small center of command to regulate the colonies, all led by the ruthless President Snow to oversee this. Well, that is god-awful. You could probably tell from my face while I was reading it that I was just in disbelief. First of all, you acknowledge the fact that Panem and the Hunger Games is set in the future, but then you say that the start of Panem was in the past after the Revolutionary War in the 1700s? And I don't even know what that whole thing with Georgia was about. And the furthest south, and thus the farthest away from the capital in District 13, the capital is not District 13, it's in the Rocky Mountains as its own thing. I don't even know if the person who made this theory has even read the books or seen the movies. And the fact that they said that it was all led by the ruthless President Snow? What? He was a teenager when the 10th Hunger Games was around. To think that he was there in the 1700s to oversee this, he was hundreds of years away from being born. Wow, I don't think that there's going to be anything worse than that theory. Moving on to the next one. Artificial intelligence led to the creation of Panem. In Mockingjay, Plutarch mentions that many weapons of the past are now lost forever, including satellites. It's possible that AI took over these satellites and nearly wiped out the Earth. After the war against AI, only North America was left to start anew with Panem. With the founding of Panem, the new government invested its research into easy-to-control alternatives that could be terminated if need be. This of course refers to the mutated beasts like Jabberjays, Mutts, Trackerjackers, and so on, which are far less convenient than the advanced technology they could make being so far in the future. The lack of technology used in Panem's warfare is suspicious. The use of these beasts might be because they do not trust technology anymore after AI turned on them in the past. Well, it is interesting to think about why they don't use technology like drones and stuff, and it is interesting to think that instead of using that, they use these like mutated beasts. But overall, they still use technology. They have those airships, they have TVs, they have cameras. And if you're going by movie canon, like they have a whole room full of technology that would easily be taken over by AI. But again, that's just in the movies. We never really saw that in the books, but we can kind of assume that they had something similar. But it's fun to think about, especially with the advancement of AI today. And they do have some good and interesting points, but overall, again, I don't think that that's what happened. But it's fun to think about. Next theory. Lucy Gray is President Alma Coin. What? Alright, I'm gonna give it a chance. Instead of being Coin's mother, some theories point to Lucy Gray becoming President Coin if she escaped District 13 after the Battle of Songbirds and Snakes. For this to be true, she would have to have used the advanced technology of 13 to slow her aging. She then fully committed herself to the path of revenge, making her turn just as evil as Snow as they fought for power. What technology in District 13? They are probably the most limited people in all of Panem. Where would they have the technology to slow her aging down? Yeah, not the best theory. This is probably the second worst. I don't think anything's gonna beat that other theory about Britain winning the Revolutionary War. That was god-awful. Next one. Katniss was hijacked to love Peeta. Fans were introduced to hijacking as a form of brainwashing in Mockingjay, and some fans theorized that it was first shown earlier in the series. According to the theory, Katniss seeing Peeta while suffering under the Trackerjacker venom in the arena gave her an accidental but powerful sense of allegiance to him. Just as Peeta was conditioned to hate Katniss, she was conditioned to love him. Again, an interesting theory that actually does take the lore of Hunger Games and puts it to use. But I think for that to work, like, it takes a lot more than just a few stings of the Trackerjackers and then just seeing someone. Like Peeta, they like held his eyes open, forced him to watch, used the venom, pumped it into his veins. So I don't think that that little of Trackerjacker venom from Katniss getting a few stings would be drastic enough to make her fall in love with Peeta. Also for myself, I love Katniss and Peeta, so I don't want to admit that that is how she fell in love with him. Moving on to the next one, the rest of the world doesn't care about Panem. The outside world is never mentioned in the Hunger Games. If Panem is set in North America, what happened to the rest of the world? This theory claims that nothing happened. The rest of the world kept going as normal, uncaring about the horrors in Panem. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is an okay theory. I think if the rest of the world is there, I don't know, like, they probably would have helped, but at the same time, they would be like, that's a shit show, I don't want to go anywhere near that. But it is stated, well actually I don't know if it's specifically stated, but it's implied that Panem is the last living civilization on Earth. But again, that's not specifically stated, so it's not impossible. Next one. District 13 intentionally destroyed the hospital, not the capital. Coin most likely realized that District 13 would have no real use for the hospital patients, especially because they were in no condition to work or fight for the rebellion. We know that District 13 took a hovercraft painted with the capital seal and bombed hundreds of innocent children. This means that it's not really a stretch that they would do the same thing to the hospital in District 8, mainly to get propaganda footage. To back this theory even more, the District 13 commanders were against Katniss doing anything to stop the bombing because they were ordered to let it happen. I can get behind this theory. I can definitely see Coin doing something like that. It's very possible, especially with the District 13 commanders trying to stop Katniss from intervening and stopping it. So yeah, it's a possibility. I like that theory. Moving on to the next one, Peeta and Prim weren't raped randomly. No, raped. Oh god. Peeta and Prim weren't reaped randomly. I should cut that out, but that's funny, so I'm gonna leave that in. The odds of Prim and Peeta being chosen were slim, as Prim was only in there once, and Peeta, who never had to add his name more than required, was only in there 5 times. This theory says that they were chosen on purpose, knowing that Katniss would volunteer for her sister when Prim was chosen, and knowing that Peeta was in love with Katniss. Adding to this theory, Cinna and Portia, the most creative designers, were assigned to the worst district when Cinna himself requested to be there, which doesn't make sense. We later find out that Cinna was helping out the rebels, which ties this theory together. The rebels used Plutarch's influence, who was in fact one of the many game makers for the 74th Hunger Games, telling Effie, a person desperate to further her career and who would do anything to do so, was told to choose Prim and Peeta. They knew that this would lead to Katniss and Peeta, who the rebels believed would be the perfect people to incite the uprising. There's a lot to unpack there. The odds that they would know that Katniss would volunteer for Prim, that's a pretty big risk to take. I think that if this were the case, they would have just reaped Katniss herself. But it is fascinating to take a look at Effie wanting to advance her career and doing something very unethical to do so. But I think this is a shot in the dark with them planning the entire rebellion around Katniss and Peeta before they even went into the arena. No one knew about them. They were in District 12 in poverty. They were on nobody's radar. I think that their act of rebellion in the 74th Hunger Games made the rebels be like, oh shoot, these people could do something, but I don't think that they would have recruited them from the very beginning. Next theory. Maude Ivory is Katniss Everdeens' grandmother. I actually made a video about this one, which I'll link down below. So, alright, let me go through it. Maude Ivory is a member of the Covey and is Lucy Gray's cousin. She is shown to love music and learns the name Katniss from Lucy Gray, as well as the lyrics to Lucy Gray's songs. If Maude Ivory later gave birth to Katniss's mother or father, this would explain Katniss's knowledge of the songs taught to her by her dad that both she and Lucy Gray sing, and of course how Maude Ivory would pass on the name Katniss. So I don't actually really like how they worded this one, but I think it is a very plausible theory. I think the main evidence is the fact that Katniss's father knew the songs that Lucy Gray wrote so many years ago. The only way that that would be able to be passed on was if someone from the Covey was in Katniss's family. So yeah, this is one of the better theories in my opinion. Next one. Tigris turned her back on Coriolanus because of Finnick's games. Oh, okay. It's implied in the prequel novel that Tigris used sex work as a way to get food and resources for her and Coriolanus during their time of poverty. After the events of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Tigris became a stylist for the games, making it possible that she was involved at the time of Finnick's games. Finnick was only 14 when he won and was forced into sex work by Coriolanus not long after that. Witnessing Finnick suffer similar abuse to her because of her cousin Coriolanus would be enough to make Tigris happy to see Snow dead and Mockingjay. So I'm just gonna say she was already starting to be against her cousin at the end of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes when they were still teenagers. So I think she was against Snow long before that. So she might have gotten even more hatred on top of that if she found out about what Snow was doing to Finnick and a few other people that were also forced into basically prostitution. So yeah, I do like this theory, but I would just change it to her having more hatred for Snow, and maybe this is the last straw that made her say, I want him dead. She might not have wanted her cousin dead before that. So yeah, I like this theory. Next one. Snow was the head Gamemaker in the first quarter Quell. In the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Snow was shown to be a big part of bringing new elements that revolutionized the Hunger Games. This impressed Dr. Gale, who from there basically groomed Snow to be a Gamemaker. Snow would have been in his early 30s at the time of the 25th Hunger Games, making him the perfect age. Given Gale's trust in him, it makes sense that he would be bestowed the honor of the first quarter Quell, which cemented his legacy and would ultimately lead to him becoming president. I really like this theory too. I think it is very likely that he was a Gamemaker for at least one game, and I think it's very likely that Gale would use her influence to make sure that he had one of the biggest games in the history, being the first quarter Quell. And honestly, I would bet that if he did do the 25th Hunger Games, he was the one to name it the quarter Quell. So yeah, I really like that one. I think that one is very, very possible. Moving on to the next one. The Hunger Games test the district's rebellion capabilities. Panem relies on the districts being submissive to the will of the capital, and this theory proposes that the Hunger Games were actually used to keep an eye on whether the districts could rise up again. The games were used to give the capital an idea of which districts to fear, what weapons work effectively, and who to keep an eye on. The capital needs to keep the strongest fighters from getting any wild ideas of rebellion. Okay, yeah, this explains why they would give more privileges to the career districts, because they are probably the biggest threat. So by rewarding them, it makes them less likely to rise against them. But saying that the Hunger Games were created to keep an eye on the districts is a long shot. We know why the Hunger Games were created. They were created to punish the districts. And of course, we have Snow's famous line to Dr. Gale, which really explains that.
What are the Hunger Games for?
To remind us all who we truly are.
Next theory, Lucy Gray became Greasy Say. Greasy Say has a much larger role in the books and is shown to be an ally to Katniss in many ways throughout the story. She is a mainstay of the Black Market, the Hob, and District 12, and is later chosen to be on President Coin's small council in Mockingjay. If Lucy Gray decided to return to District 12 after a few years and change her name and appearance, it's possible that no one would recognize her. Few people remembered the events of the 10th Hunger Games because the Capitol never re-aired them, giving even more evidence to this theory. I mean, my first thought is, where would she have been before she came back to District 12? She would have had to age a lot to not be recognized as Lucy Gray, so she would have had to be gone for a very long time. So where would she have gone? Where would she have been? And my only other thought that this theory might be proposing is that she got plastic surgery to change her face. But how? How would she have done that? She would be all alone, I guess, just in the woods, either waiting to age or somehow getting plastic surgery, doing it herself. I guess it doesn't make sense. Moving on to the next one, the 75th Hunger Games arena was made for Finnick. Plutarch most likely knew that Katniss would immediately go to the cornucopia and attempt to grab a bow and arrow. Knowing this, he redesigned the cornucopia to be in the middle of water, where he knew Finnick would be the first or second tribute to get there due to his background from District 12. This theory is backed up as Finnick asks Katniss, "Do you like the arena?" And Katniss replies with, "Not particularly, but you should. They must have built it especially for you." This one I think is very, very possible. I don't even know if this is a theory. That might just be a fact that you're supposed to imply. Plutarch is obviously the head Gamemaker, so he designed the entire arena. So it's very likely that he would give Finnick, who was already part of the rebellion, a much easier shot at getting to the cornucopia to guard Katniss, which is exactly what he does. He throws that trident into the dude's chest. And with those lines where Katniss literally says that he would like it because they built it specially for him, yeah. That's pretty clear evidence. Next theory. Tigris was inspired by Lucy Gray in creating capital fashion. Tigris, seeing what her cousin Coriolanus had become, she might have retaliated in her own subtle way. Tigris was a stylist for the games and part of a powerful capital family. Through this, she used her influence to create the colorful and flamboyant fashion that was all the rage by the time of Katniss's Hunger Games. When Lucy Gray appeared in rainbows and ribbons, it was hardly the style of the time, but Tigris may have woven her memory and style into the fabric of the capital to subtly punish Snow. This is a fun theory and would make Tigris pretty petty, which I love. She was obviously a very influential person in the capital with style, but honestly, I don't think that she would have enough pull to be able to change the entire capital's wardrobe. Like, that's hard to do. Although she was probably this leader that many other people were like, oh, Tigris is doing that, I should probably make something similar to that. So I don't know, it could be possible that she started this trend that all of these other designers just followed in her footsteps. So yeah, I basically just talked myself into saying that I do like this theory. And that's all 25 fan theories. Please let me know in the comments what you think of these and also what you think of my own opinions on each one. I'm very excited to read your thoughts and see what you have to say, because this is the perfect time and the perfect place and the perfect way for Hunger Games fans to start conversations. So do that in the comments. Start conversations, reply to people, and just tell me what you think. That's all I have for you guys today though, so I will see you in the next video.